I see them. Gas mask and tear gas. Helmets, vests with black boots. I see them. Faces covered for protection. Hands raised in the plea not to die, but to be heard in a society of forced silence. Trying to remember a lost truth of who we really are as a people. I see them. Masked together.
30 seconds. Yo, we can't hear nothing, Dylan.
All right. Welcome to Justice Conversations. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to have an animated discussion today about race and criminal justice. We're joined with, we heard from Moose from SCI Phoenix to start off the program. Joined, of course, with my co-host, Luis Suave Gonzalez. Also joined with Radi and Dr. Argus Terrier, here to have a discussion about current events that are going on. We have quite a bit of material to discuss, I would say. Welcome, everybody.
All right, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Radi. What's your last name?
Hammett, Radi Hammett.
Radi Hammett, okay.
Yes, sir.
Very good, all right.
On you, Doc.
Okay, so Radi, so what is your background?
Right now, my background is I am a liaison, a community liaison for the Man Up Association, which is based out of SCI Phoenix, and that is the communication relations between myself and the president of Man Up right now, who is Tyree Wallace, who was an innocent man currently serving a life sentence. He's been incarcerated for 23 years. He is the president of the Man Up Association, and basically I handle all of the community communication relations between myself and engaging with the councilmen and council members in Philadelphia, councilwomen, as well as welcoming the men home when they come home, and getting them connected with resources as far as the Institute for Community Justice, which I am connected with as well, and helping them make that smooth transition back into society.
Gotcha. Okay. And at the top of the show, we heard from Dr. Terrier. That was somebody that's incarcerated currently?
Yeah, that was Moose, who is doing a life sentence at SCI Phoenix here in Montgomery County, PA, and it's called Hear Me Now. And it is his finger on the pulse of America right now. And so I think one thing that maybe people don't realize is that people who are incarcerated, even those who have been spending, you know, like Radi just said of Tyree, 23 years in prison or more, 40 years in prison, their entire lives in prison, they are very much about what's going on right now. And they, even though they may have been exiled from the, you know, being able to be among us, they are very much among us in spirit. And what that Hear Me Now clip is Men in SCI Phoenix. My organization, Songs in the Key of Free, made an album in there, a concept album addressing mass incarceration. And we're also producing a podcast called Prison Prophets that's available now. And the songs are available now on third-party streaming platforms. And so those voices that have been silenced, some for their entire lives, are now being heard. The silence is being broken. And I'd like to read just very briefly one quotation from Audre Lorde about silence. I speak these words in an attempt to break the silence and bridge some of the differences between us. For it is not difference which immobilizes us, but silence. And there are so many silences to be broken. And so Songs in the Key of Free, one of our main platforms, is that those silences are nowhere in America or in the world more palpable or more enduring than in prisons. And so we are now hearing voices that have been silenced for decades are now being heard by the nation.
Good, that's great. So some of the issues that we going to attempt to address today, of course, is race relation in America and the criminal justice system, defunding the police, you know, and where should we go from here? You know, because this is not the first time we've been here. You know, we could go all the way back to Trayvon Martin. I'm just taking it there to now, you know, and it's almost like the same conversation. What's different this time? And I will start with you, Radi. What is the difference this time? You know, from Trayvon Martin to now. What is the difference?
The difference between Trayvon Martin and to now is the fact that Trayvon Martin, yes, he was a young Black African American man, who was fatally killed. And the difference between now is that it has been so many after Trayvon Martin that time at a time again, it's like, how much can a person take? How much can the people take after that happened to Trayvon, which was enough? Now we had about 4 or 5 more instances in between that, including up until now with George Floyd, and then we just had another one in Atlanta. So I think it's just the simple fact is that I was telling somebody the other day, when you fill a certain cup up to the point where as though it can't take any more of what you're filling up in it tends to overflow. So now you have a overflow of feelings and emotions. You have a generation of people who are tired, who have mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers who have been racially profiled, who have been on the other side of the law and justice behind the walls in the system, getting untreated fairly as far as the law is concerned. You have people who have family members who are innocent, who have been locked up for decades. And that's just added on to now in the streets of all over in the city, cops and people in authority are taking advantage of people who are of the Black color, of the Black descent, and they're literally killing us. And I think that enough is enough, and people are getting tired of it. And the way to express it was the looting and was the protests and things of that nature. No, we're not condoning that, but at the same time, we have to understand where that is coming from. It's coming from a place of unrest. It's coming from a place of I'm tired. It's coming from a place of decades and decades and decades of this happening. So I'm not surprised that it's happening, but at the end of the day, we have to understand that it's coming from a place that people are just tired. I'm tired. I'm tired of saying it. I'm tired of being profiled myself and me being a returning citizen. I'm tired of looking over my back when I'm even driving in my car, when I get pulled over, when I know I have my license and everything like that, and I'm all legit. I'm tired of it because it's trauma. And at the end of the day, sometimes trauma turns into unrest, and unrest turns into people expressing themselves in ways that some people might not like it.
You know, another thing that's different now, everybody's got their phones out. Trayvon Martin's murder was not filmed, but George Floyd's was. And right. I think a big thing that's different now is that we are putting the police on blast all over right. this nation. And we are beginning to realize that the police are functioning as state-sanctioned violence against citizens, particularly citizens of color.
So lately we've been hearing the people. Well, first of all, let me address something that Radi said that I think needs to be said. A lot of the looting, right? People like to bring that up. But what people are not saying is that a lot of the people that was breaking into these stores, or they're initiated breaking into these stores, with outside people. Groups are outside from the community that started doing that. If you look at the news lately, they just arrested a young woman, white woman. They burned 2 police cars in front of City Hall. Right? If you remember when that first happened, they was trying to say the looters, but all the images that they were showing when they mentioned that was Black. Right? Kind of find out after they did the initial investigation through Facebook or whatever, it was a white woman. They burned these 2 police cars. So I just want to say that a lot of these looters are from outside of our communities, coming in, breaking into these stores and making it look like we looting, making it look like we taking advantage of the situation. Yes, a lot of us participated because it is what it is, but no, a lot of us wasn't the ones breaking into these stores first. I know because I work downtown. I work in Center City, So a lot of these Center Cities break-ins and looting didn't happen because of people in our community. It was people that came from outside taking advantage of a peaceful march and turning it into something else. Go ahead, Doc. I see you shaking your head.
Well, what makes me think of is, some people might not be aware of this, but there are organizations in this country, white supremacist organizations like the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys, that Trump has been dog whistling to for his entire administration, right? And some of these people came out and did deliberate violence in neighborhoods, deliberate looting, and there is this idea that they have, and you can read about it. Don't take my word for it. That what they want is a civil war based on race, right? That's their aim, and they are the people who are armed to the teeth, not African American people, not women even, right? It's white men who are heavily, heavily armed. And so we just need to be aware that when we talk about people doing destruction in cities, so-called looting, violence, or whatever, that is an element that is deliberately sowing violence.
And also,
Yeah.
to address something you said earlier, that I believe that the difference is that white people are fed up.
Right.
That's the difference. If you look at most of these marches that have been taking place in Philly, it's been young white people leading them, right? Which I think is a beautiful thing, because when they get fed up, people start hearing. But I make no mistakes about it that racism is still in the place. It's still happening. Even with George Floyd's marches, we have brothers Rashad Brooks in Atlanta get shot. Even in the mix of all this, so to a certain extent, I ask the question, does defending the police benefit our community? And I'm talking about on a nation level. Do we think that defunding the police benefit our community? And if so, in what way?
Well, one thing you can look at is Camden. And I'm not an authority on this, but I know that the Camden police chief has been speaking out on a lot of these shows lately, and Camden has been held up as an exemplar of what happens when you do defund the police. Because I think a lot of people think defunding the police means eliminating the police. That's not what it means. It means reestablishing their their charge, what they're there to do. And instead of the citizens being deployed, instead of the police being deployed against citizens, they would be deployed as, in ways that would be supporting citizens, that would be cooperating and collaborating with citizens. And people can look for themselves at Camden and read about it. They completely fired the entire police force and started over, right? And the idea was that what the chief of police said was, you're not out there to arrest people. You're not out there to sow conflict with people and violence with people. You're out there to listen and be supportive and be in community with others, right? And so he even said, I don't necessarily even want you writing tickets to people. Right? And so when you talk about defunding the police, I think what all of us in this nation are thinking about now and need to keep thinking about is like, what are the police for? Like, it's almost like behind our backs, they become this enemy of the people, like out to do harm to us and even kill us and shoot us in the back. When I say us, I don't mean, obviously I'm speaking as a white person, but in particular to shoot people of color and to arrest people of color. And I think if we bring it back, as Brian was saying at the beginning, to the criminal justice system, there's no doubt that there are, when we look at our prisons and jails, that they're absolutely filled with people of color, right? And that is because the police are focusing on people of color and criminalizing them, right? You know, and Radi talked about, you know, Tyree Wallace being an innocent man, right? And so, and there's a big force now to get him released, and I so hope that happens. But I think it's so important to say that there are people in prisons who have committed a crime, right? White and black and you know, any race of people, and those people deserve to come home too, right? If you committed a crime 40 years ago, right, and you're still in prison now, we need to think really hard about why that would be the case, right? And so, to bring it back to the point that I was making, because the police have been criminalizing Black people, that's why Black people are predominantly represented in prisons, not because they are more guilty in more crimes. That's not the case.
I think also too, to add to what you're saying, Doc, and to add to what you're saying, Suave, you have a lot of police officers who are already scared of Black folks in the beginning before they even get the job. They were raised to not like Black folks. They were raised to look at Black folks like we are the enemy already before they even get in these jobs. So they're coming into these jobs with a fear of a race when they shouldn't even have that fear. And with that being said, there should be something in place, training. There should be things in place so they can have some type of understanding. Hey, when you go into certain neighborhoods, when you go to police certain neighborhoods, there are going to be people in these neighborhoods that's not going to look like you, that's not going to talk like you, that's not going to react like you. They are going to be apprehensive. They're going to be on the defense because you are white. I think that these are the things that have to go into the psyche of a lot of these white officers when they go into neighborhoods, because a lot of times, and I see when they walk on the beat, a lot of cops that walk on the beat, they're white, they're walking on the beat in Black neighborhoods. And a lot of them, their hands are already on the trigger. So this is something that has to be established before they even get out into the field. They need training. They need training by someone who is African-American, who can actually tell them what they're going to be, what those encounters are going to be, what they're going to run up against, instead of just throwing them out there when they already have a pre-conscious or pre-notation of what a Black person is about.
Absolutely.
So before, give me 1 second, Doc. So before we go to the next topic, right? When we talk about defunding the police, what are we specifically talking about, right? Because if you look at it in a deeper level, right? Are we talking about defunding domestic violence units, units, the homicide units, investigation units? What are we talking about? Because when you defund the police, it creates another problem. Who's going to respond to that guy's getting shot down the block? Right? Who's going to respond when that woman is getting her butt whipped by her boyfriend somewhere? I mean, you know, so what are we talking about? Because I think there needs to be a thorough conversation of what are we talking about defunding.
I think that is so true. And I think the word defunding might be a bit of a misnomer. And I'm so glad you're homing in on that, because I don't think people are saying that there won't be a police force, you know, that all of the money will be taken and there will be no police. I think the idea is, like I was saying about Camden, that we take that police budget and there's oversight of that. There's community oversight of that. And we are rethinking the role of police. We are retraining police, kind of what Radi was talking about, right? That like the whole idea of what is a police force in America, it's kind of been like mushrooming behind our backs, right? And we don't get any say in that. We don't have any involvement in that. I think the police forces need to turn to the community, open up an entire conversation about what is policing? What are we doing? What's our charge? What are we here for? How can we become partners of the communities? How can we actually keep communities safer? Because, you know, a huge thing, we're talking about criminal justice here. It is a total farce to believe that because more than 2 million fellow American citizens are sitting in prison that we're safer is absolutely not true. Prisons do not keep us safe, right? And like Radi is saying, having white cops walking the street already threatened by Black men because of systemic racism, right? So they're out there, they're scared AF of Black men. And so if we're gonna, be trigger happy, like Wardee is saying, all of that needs to be completely rethought, and the inherent racism of police departments needs to be abolished. They need to be retrained as in anti-racism practices and tactics, and there are tons of people in America who do anti-racism trainings, and they should all be brought into police departments.
And
Well,
there, Doc.
one of the issues here, talking about defunding is a very polarizing term. And I think that we need to reframe that as you're talking about, Dr. Terrier, into reprioritizing and maybe also diverting funds, I should say, to other resources. So we have crisis intervention social work units, for example,
Yes.
for certain calls. Police are this catch-all, respond to everything. And they're not really equipped to do that. They're equipped for certain particular things. So we need to have specialized units for particular types of problems. And yes, we still need police. We still need a certain type of law enforcement approach for certain things, but not across the board. It's not always the appropriate response. We had a speaker in from West Goshen, Suave and I, a couple months ago, does mental health intervention. And he specifically is trained to deal with de-escalation and dealing with the mentally ill suspects and situations. Unfortunately, that training is not across the board. It's not even required. It's recommended, but it's not, it's not mandatory that they have this training. So we need to have more specialized training and units that specialize such things, or have teams of social workers that accompany police officers to such things, because we have this heavy-handed approach that doesn't always work, right? So that's one of the problems.
Right. But also, now that we talk about defunding, I also believe that we should not just stop with defunding the police, right? If we're going to reconstruct the whole racist system that we living under right now, we should defund all these little institutions and all these little community organizations that embrace these systematic racism tactics, right? Let's defund them too, because it starts there. It starts there. I don't know where I saw it at, but I saw it on Facebook somewhere a couple of weeks ago, and it was a young woman from North Philadelphia holding up a sign. They said, "We are not our ancestors," right? And what I mean by that is, right, that we, the people in today's time, we willing to take, to stand up to these organizations and just take it in the chin, like they said. It's time that we just not just talk about defunding one institution. Why not defund all of them? Why not take all the funding from these community organizations that's supposed to be helping people of color, but they don't. They act like they do, but they don't. Let's defund them and give that money to people like Wardee that's really doing the work. Let's be more specific. Let's do that. Because we see a lot of them in our community today, of different groups. They embrace these racist tactics, but they act like they care about us, right? Don't be fooled because somebody that own a white establishment put a sign up that say, "I support Black Lives Matter." Don't be fooled by that. There's plenty of them. I've seen plenty of them. But when you go in their store, they got their little dogs watching you. They're watching you up and down. So what I'm saying is, let's start defunding the whole system. The court system, the DA's office, the police department, these city organizations that collect all these grant money but don't do nothing for our people. Let's defund them. You see, because when you take it to where it hurts them, which is their pocket, people will listen. The only reason right now that they listening is because the people, young people, are talking about we want to defund the police. So let's take it to where it hurts them, which is their pocket. And at the same time, we can't be scared to stand up for what we believe. Because if you don't stand up for nothing, you fall for anything. You know, and our people are tired. Our people are tired. We're not just talking about black people. We're talking about people of color, Hispanics, people of color.
Right.
We tired. We tired of just being kicked in the butt and take a goodbye. We tired of this government that we elect to put in office, giving us crumbs when we are the people that put people in office. So I just hope that come November 2nd, we keep the same energy and we let our voice be heard at the polls. It's on you, Dr. O'Neill.
Well, one thing is also missing from the discussion is ethics training. You know, I was doing a little research on this for a class I'm teaching currently about ethics in criminal justice and specifically ethics in policing. Michael Quinn is an ex-police officer from Minneapolis, ironically. He specializes in training police in ethics, and he talks about the fact that there's a lack of such training in the police. And what we're talking about is when a co-officer does something inappropriate or steps over the line, having somebody else on the scene that intervenes, even though that might be a superior officer, and intervenes to tell them to stop and to stop the behavior. The problem, of course, with that is there's serious repercussions to people that take that role and do whistleblowing. They are punished, they're stigmatized, they put their career in jeopardy by doing that. So we need to create a safety net for people to intervene when they see something that's inappropriate and to have protection to intervene. And we need to encourage officers as part of their training that they have the not only the right to do that, but the obligation to do that. And if they do so, will be protected and will not be subject to repercussions from other people. And you're talking about a job where your life is on the line. So you don't want to risk not having backup because you ostracized somebody you work with. So we need to create safety for those officers to report bad behavior, to reinforce that, and so that that is something that's part of your job responsibility. Doesn't matter if the person's a superior officer or not. If they step over the line, they need to be stopped immediately, and the only person who can do that is some other officer on the scene, right? You have that in Minneapolis where the people standing by while George Floyd was being killed on the street. They stood by next to that and didn't do anything. And part of that is because of the socialization and the norms in effect where you aren't supposed to do anything. You know, your superior officer is doing something, you cannot say anything, you cannot stop him, you have to, you know, acquiesce to whatever that person's doing. That structure has to be changed. And we need to start with making it safe for officers to report fellow officers. And I mean that they can't face repercussions or punishment for doing these things. That's really not going to change anything unless we put those things into place. Because your loyalty is always going to be to your fellow officer, even if they're doing something deviant. We have to change that.
And that's very.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, Rodney.
Go ahead.
And that's very important, Dr. O'Neill. I think what has to happen is that, just like Suave was saying, in order for you to get someone's attention, you have to go to their hit their pockets. You got to hit the things that's going to affect them the most. Just say, for example, when George Floyd was at that point in time in his life when he was screaming for his life, if there was a white shirt on the scene, if there was a captain on the scene, if there was someone on the scene who was in the chain of commands protocol to where as though that would not have even happened because he was there. And I think that you can take it all the way back to, because there's nothing new under the sun. You can take it back to when police do racial profiling. when they see a black man driving a car, when they see young black men in cars, they might have tinted windows that give them their antennas go up. They pulling them over. So now you have 2 white cops pulling a bunch of black males over. At that point in time, it should be a protocol in place to where, though, you know what, stop, drop, and roll. Before we even get out this car, there should be someone on the scene, whether it be another black officer, whether it be someone who is, like you said, Dr. O'Neil, a type of social worker there, is worth stopping, dropping, and rolling, because you know why? It can save a life. And that's the thing. Instead of just being so gun-ho, hopping out the car, get your hands up on the car, let me frisk you, let me see what you got, because now emotions are rising. Now people are getting, there's already a barrier between the cops and the police, let alone white cops and then black people who are getting pulled over. So now let's put something in place, like you guys were saying, that can just de-escalate these problems from happening, so that way people can feel comfortable, because now you already got the person pulled over. They're not going anywhere because you're behind them. Now let's wait till the proper person get on the scene so that we can eliminate another George Floyd, another situation happened in Atlanta. We can eliminate these deaths by putting in a proper protocols that will save people's lives, and I know it will make a difference.
But we also need, right? What people need to understand is that when you go to the police academy, they do not teach you the chokehold, because it's illegal. It is illegal to teach you that, but they teach it to you off the books. Off the books, they teach it to you, right? But as part of their training, you never find it in none of their manuals, right? Let's get that clear, right? They teach you these tactics off the books. What we need to do, the people, is demand that there be law that if you use this chokehold, that it is illegal. And if you use it, you will be prosecuted. No raps. No rap about it. No rap about it. Because you're not supposed to be using it. They don't technically, they don't teach it to you at the academy. So why is you using it? Why is you using it? So that should be a law statewide. I mean, nationwide. And second, the police force should all be retraining de-escalation tactics. All of them. They all should be given recourse. You want to really show that you really want to change? Take all your cops nationwide, 30 days, everybody, 30 days, de-escalation. Learn how to deal with mentally ill. Learn how to deal with an intoxicated person, right?
Right.
Learn how to deal with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Because what you have, like you said, right, there's a bunch of people that's already scared of us. So any little noise that they hear, just imagine, right? For those that live in the city, for the last 3 weeks, we've been hearing bombs and explosion all over the city, right? Just imagine you getting pulled over in a dark street and one of them goddamn firecrackers go off and the police come drawn on you. What you think gonna happen? You might get shot. Because he might think I'm getting off on them. And we've been hearing that every night all across the city.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you think about it, what would you do if you get pulled over in a dark street somewhere in south of North Philly and one of them little firecrackers go off, they sound like guns, and the guy and a white cop got a gun pointed at you? What you think will happen? We be talking about you in the next show. That's the reality. Because the cops, they in the job, but they working with fear. They working with fear. All of a sudden, I'm hearing in the news, we trying to identify people that assaulted the cops through the protests. Why? As quick as you arrested that woman, they burned them 2 cop cars, should be as quick as you arrest a police officer when he shoot one of us. Why do we always got to be patient? We got an investigation going on when it's clear cut that you murder somebody. Why do, and no disrespect to Dr. O'Neil or Dr. August, but why do most white people always want us to be patient when we get assaulted or when one of us get killed? Be patient. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Why? I don't understand that. And I'm trying to understand this. I'm trying not to be angry. I'm tired of white people asking, what can I do? What you mean? What can you do? Tell your cops, your brothers, your nephews that have this mentality that black people and the Latino people and the people of color are the enemy, that we not. How about that? How about that? Let's start with that, right? Because sometimes, man, we gotta go in for real. We gotta go in for real, right? This ain't the first time, and it won't be the last time. Go ahead, Doc.
I was going to say that, speaking to what you just said, Suave, and what Radi said, that there's another element here that you're both touching on that's so important, and that is, like, George Floyd was killed for a $20 bill, and many others have been killed and arrested for absolutely nothing. The utter pettiness of what's happening, and that then is escalated, right? And I think one of the profound issues here is about power, right? And so it's like the cop is holding power over the citizen. And that is a very personal thing, right? You're not being trained to do that. You're not being told to do that. That's a part of your job, to put your knee on the neck of someone who maybe had a $20 bill that was a bit sketchy, right? It's like, it's not about the quote unquote crime that's been committed. It's about the idea of subjugating and putting down this other person. And so then, speaking directly to what Suave was saying about why with white people, why, I think it's super interesting that Mitchum Kennedy, a black woman, just got Merriam-Webster to redefine racism in the dictionary, right, for the very first time. And what she was asking for is so important. She was saying, racism is not a personal one-on-one thing. That's not its only definition. It's systemic, right? It's structural oppression that's at the very foundation of American culture, right? Back to enslavement, right? And so I think I have a lot to say about this, but I think one of the biggest issues for white people is that, one, we're seeing whiteness as a kind of default, right? Like, we've been allowed to get away with that, thinking that whiteness isn't really even a race, right? And that we're all, get offended when people talk about whiteness as if it's something other than normalcy, right? And so that means we take everyone else and other them, right? And say, oh, well, that's ethnicity. That's something different. That's not the norm, right? Or that's a minority compared to whiteness. And so I think we're talking about retraining of the police and everything. I think, one, a mediator has to go out on every call, the way Radi was talking about. There have to be neutral mediators there from the community on every police call that can be witnesses to what's happening, right? But like Suave, like you were saying, I mean, I know this would be huge, but like every organization, white people have been able to hold positions of power without being questioned. It's been a given, especially for white men, that they will hold the positions of power. And so when you get down to the brass tacks of racism, it's about asking white people, well, if you were really committed to anti-racism, would you be willing to give up this default position of power that you were afforded because of your white privilege? And also, are you willing to acknowledge white privilege, right? And, many white people get very defensive and say, oh, well, I don't have any privilege. Everything's fair, which is a fair playing field. But that's not true at all. All white people have white privilege. And so if we really did have these conversations at the level of, say, corporations, at the level of every workplace in America, we would have to be asking white people, one, to listen to people of color and not be defensive, right? And also, and this is really radical, be willing to deeply question the privilege and power that has been afforded to you. That you didn't even earn it, quote unquote. We think it's like a meritocracy in America, like the people that work the hardest, get the good things, and other people don't because they don't work hard enough. It's not that at all. Like, what about you having to be in a position, the white person having to be in a position where it's not assumed that you get the best thing, that you get to be the,
No,
that you get to be.
I just want to say that we just have former state rep Ron Waters join us on the conversation. I'm glad you were able to join us, Rep. We talking about race relation in America. So if you could just join the conversation, we talking about the recent events that's been taking place across the country. George Floyd, Atlanta. How do it relate to us? You know, defunding the police and every other institution that practice these racial tactics. So give us your thought on everything that's been going on and how you see it as a former state rep. You gotta unmute your mic. Unmute your mic. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. And
Good afternoon.
Kwame, and everyone else who is joined in for this very important conversation. I missed most of it because I was having some technical difficulty. And it's probably because I'm old school, so I ain't gonna blame it on the system. It's unfortunate that we had to have this conversation here in 2020. And it's unfortunate that it took some of these most recent horrific events to have taken place in order to get the attention that we now see with the 8 minutes to 46 seconds of this horrific crime and murder that took place. And the other incidents that really didn't get attention until most recently, but happened some time ago with Breonna Taylor and the other young man, Rashad Ambry. These deaths took place, and it wasn't for video cameras that everybody now has with the new technology with these smartphones. It allows us to see it sometimes in real time, but it's not in real time. Later on, in some events that had happened, complaints that we've been having for a long time about the inequality here in our system. And as a former legislator, I know all too well about how I saw the issues that could help promote equity and in terms and in addition equality in our community. That we argue for this stuff all the time, but until we see that really happen in real time, and not in real time, but in reality, we're going to continue to keep having these conversations, and hopefully the momentum won't go away, and the energy won't go away with this demand right now to make sure everybody realizes that in America we are not going to actually enjoy the real freedoms that come with being an American until we practice what we say we stand on, and that is freedom, justice, and equality. Until we have that, Black people and people of color are just not going to be satisfied, and rightfully so, because other people who will come to this country even after the arrival of the African people who came here, and we see that they have the ability to enjoy the benefits of being in this quote unquote democracy and capitalistic society. We got to figure out what do we need to do to give people who have been disenfranchised systematically and historically for too long in this country the resources and what they really need to heal and to realize their value and worth here in this country. And that goes to the school system and all. I mean, we got to really teach real American history in our schools. We gotta really do that. We've been disenfranchised from the religious aspect for years and years. And I hope I don't offend anybody when I say this, because I know that I used to go to church all the time. And it's kind of hard for a person to go and see an image of someone, which is really, we're not supposed to have images of divinity, but to see these images when we go to religious institutions all the time from years and years and years, and not feel slighted or missing in that historical perspective, and it gives other people who do relate to those images a sense of a purpose. So, I mean, there's a lot of things, damage that has happened to us, and we got to get real about what is it going to take to give us a level playing field, and not to stand on people, and not to and exercise their right to breathe and to feel free. So there's a lot that's going to have to take place. I'm happy to see that people of all colors are joining this momentum right now, but it's going to have to continue. And people, if you really don't want to be a part of the problem, you have to stand up and say, we support freedom, justice, and equality, and mean it, and practice it, and demand it. So I thank you all.
O'Neill,
Yes, sir.
it's on you.
Well, you know, there was a law in the books in Minnesota that says the duty to intervene in cases where a fellow officer is doing something unlawful or inappropriate. But it goes back to what is practical and whether officers feel not just that are obligated by duty, but feel that they have safety in doing that, and that they aren't going to be punished by their fellow officers if they intervene. And that's why I talk about laws in the books being important, but not the only answer, because we need to have officers socialized to intervene and be protected in such cases when they intervene. And ethics is about doing the right thing when nobody's watching. You know, knowing what you're supposed to do, but being free to do it and feel like you're confident in doing it. And that's what's missing right now. You know, there's virtually no ethics and training in policing academies. And if you ask police chiefs if they expect, and then Michael Quinn asked something like 50 police chiefs in his research. He's the guy that teaches ethics and policing, his former officer. I mean, he asked them, how many of you have in place a reporting system? None of them did. So he asked them, so you expect an officer to be honest with you about somebody doing something inappropriate? He said, oh, absolutely. Then you expect that same officer to go back out in his squad car again the next day, right? Obviously, there's a missing link there, because the answer to that is, oh, yes, of course we expect them back to work. After reporting on fellow officers, just go back in the squad car again with thinking nothing's going to happen, no repercussions. Of course, that's not going to happen.
So where do we now get that?
So you need to have not just a reporting system, but you have to have protections in place for people that whistleblow. They have to be looked at as heroes, not as parasites, not as somebody stigmatized, not as somebody's going to get death threats after they report on a fellow officer. And that's what the atmosphere is now. These men and women, careers are ruined if they report on their fellow officers. There's documented cases of that. So they're told you're supposed to do the right thing, but in practicality, they can't do the right thing unless they want to sacrifice their careers. In some cases, their lives are on the line because they now don't feel safe. They call for backup and nobody comes because they've committed this cardinal sin of reporting on a fellow officer. And until we change that dynamic, you're not going to see these changes implemented. That's very important at the very basis of this. All these platitudes of what should be done and how this is going to work, that's all wasted unless you put into place the methods by which an officer can report and not have repercussions for doing so.
And you know what? I remember when I was a kid, they had these police advisory committees in the community. There was basic citizens. And I keep hearing that's coming up and up. Let me say this, them committees don't have no power at all. They don't have the power to do nothing other than to meet and say, I'm on a committee that deals with this. That's it. You know, so where do we go from here? Right there, I got a question for you, right? And I
Yeah.
hope you can answer it, right? As a returning citizen, as a black man, you know, what are your thoughts when you walk out your door every day? You know, what do you think? When you walk out the door and you see a cop car or you see a cop, what runs through your mind?
When I see a cop car, when I walk out my door, and there's already trauma there. You know what I mean? There's already trauma there because of certain things that I've been through already previously before I got incarcerated and leading up to me being incarcerated behind the walls of the penitentiary, dealing with the guards, and dealing with people of that nature. What goes through my mind is the fact that I have to be a stand-up and upright citizen, which that's what we're supposed to be anyway, law-abiding citizen. But at the end of the day, I have to do it extra on a whole nother different level than so say a white person would have to do it. No disrespect to the Caucasian people on the panel once again. But at the end of the day, we have to go above and beyond to show and prove that we are not who they already think in our mind that we are. So it's almost like an out-of-body experience. It's almost like I have to be on my P's and Q's. I have to walk on eggshells. I have to cross my T's and dot my I's when as though I'm supposed to be in the land of the free and the home of the brave. I'm not feeling like that because I'm feeling like I'm a prisoner in my own city. I'm a prisoner in my own country because there is a stigma that's already labeled attached to me as a black man saying that I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not wanted here. And if I do anything out of the norm that's not the norm in somebody else's thinking, then that makes me a prisoner. That makes me a person who is not doing the right thing when I can just be living my life freely. So why is that attached to myself as a black man? Why is it attached to me and not attached to anyone else? Because it's already a preconceived notion in people's minds that I'm already up to no good. And here I'm a person that has a nonprofit organization called the Reawakening Agency. I'm the liaison for the Man Up Association. I'm helping citizens who are returning back to be able to knock out that narrative saying that we're no good. So I'm walking on eggshells. That's exactly what it feels like. And that's like, and just like the gentleman said, the former state rep said, that's never until we really get to the root of it and troubleshoot the root of what's going on, until we actually go to defund those organizations who actually are supposed to be helping the community and they're supposed to be helping the situation instead of getting the money sitting on it. There needs to be some type of troubleshooting when it comes to who gets what and how they get it. Because right now, everybody who is getting certain funding that's supposed to help, they're not doing anything to help the community, because if they did, we would see a better result.
You know what? I appreciate your honesty because I feel the same way. You know, I'm one that I wear a lot of black. Everybody knows that. Sometimes I just wear all black. And I stopped wearing, and I stopped doing that because when the military was down by City Hall, I went down there to report to work. Now, remember, I worked for an organization that was feeding people that suffering from food insecurity in front of City Hall, right? And the military come, I walked through. The guy stopped me and asked me where's I'm going. Nah, I wasn't jaywalking. I wasn't doing nothing illegal. I was just walking, going to the church to feed the people. And I tell them I work with these people. I have to show them my ID and all. But yet, one of my co-workers, this white, walked right through and they ain't said jack to her. And I know that guy stopped me because I look like one of them dudes that's ready to march. I got a backpack, I'm dressed in black, I got a mask over my face, a black mask for that matter. And I just look like I'm going to march somewhere. I was going to march to work, you know, and I just felt like, damn, you know, that's all I can say, like, damn, you know, because you hear about these things, right? But until it happens to you, you don't believe it, you know, because we always tell, well, you might have stopped at where they was at. No, I was going to work at Broad Street in front of City Hall and was stopped by the military, you know, and it got to the point where I said, yo, can I get a picture with y'all now that y'all stopped me? And I got the picture, right? Because to me, I was like, damn, you know, if I was marching, you probably would have never catch me. But now that I'm coming to work, so now when I get off and I see the police, because I work downtown, I normally put my ID out, my work ID out. So they know, like, I'm going to work because I see how they treat people. I see, and not only black people or people of color, I see how they treat poor white people if they think you are homeless down there versus somebody that look like they're going to work at a corporate office. You know, I see it. I see it all the time. You know, and it pissed me off for two reasons. Because my brother is a cop. Most of y'all know this. You know, and I just hope that he's not participating in bad behavior, which I don't think he is. However, right, sometimes, man, we need to understand that we can't take it no more. You know, we like to play judgment on these young people out in the street that's doing what they're doing. Oh, well, they looting, right? And I always tell people, guess what? Walmart be open the next day. It's corporate America. Whatever they took, it's really not a loss. They got multi-million dollars insurance. And I'm not encouraging looting. I'm making a point. The point is, right, that they really don't care about you looting. They don't care about none of that. What they care is that they seen a multitude of melting pot of people. They seen white people, Chinese people in the front line of this movement. That's what they care about. That's what they worry about. Because if we could carry this same energy to November 2nd, November 3rd, we be talking about a different president. Because most of this is fueled by our current president, by his racist statement. You know, he's ready to hold a march in Oklahoma. He wanted to hold it on the same day. Y'all know when I'm going, June 10th. Is he crazy? And then he gonna say he made it famous? And we just gonna sit around and supposed to be like, oh, thank you, number 45? Man, is he crazy? We need to show him. We need to be encouraging the young people. Do not stop marching. March all the way to November 2nd. And let's show the people that hold these institutions, right, and these racist taxes in all these institutions, that we fed up and we ain't taking it no more. Because sometimes that's what we got to do. So I just want to thank all the people that's marching out there. Everybody, like they say their name, right? We not our ancestors. We are a different breed. We are a different breed. And I think State Representative Ron Waters, former state rep, I think Dr. August, Rod D, I think Dr. O'Neill, because y'all not scared to talk about these issues. Y'all bringing these issues. We need more people like this panel to keep the conversation going. You know, we got scholars. You know, in case you don't know, Dr. O'Neill is a professor. Dr. August is a professor. I'm not a professor with a title, but I am, though. Ron Waters. You know, this is a man. This is a man a lot of people don't know. This is a man that when he was a state rep, he was inside a state penitentiary at least 5 times a month.
All right.
You know, we witnessed conversations with that man telling the superintendent, I'm elected, you were selected. You know, And what a lot of people don't know, those are powerful statements when you speak them to a superintendent of a prison, right? But guess what they knew? That Mr. Ron Waters was a black man of color. They had the power to remove you if he wanted to. It's not what he did, but he had the power to do that. You know, so what I'm saying to the people is, we don't need to accept crumbs no more. We don't need to be in second place. If we unite like we doing right now, we gonna be number one. Your voice will be heard, but you gotta let it be heard. You can't be scared. You can't be scared. Too many people have sacrificed for our freedom. You know, now it's time for us to make it happen for the next generation. Doc, it's on you, Dr. O'Neill.
Well, I agree with everything you just said, Suave. I think that what it really comes down to is people voting and making their voices heard, not just on the street, but when it comes time to vote in November, that traditionally in this country, we've had low turnout amongst certain age groups, and that needs to change in order that power on the street to actually be recognized in an official
Different
way.
now, man. It's going to be different November, Doc.
I hope so.
guarantee you. We feeling it. It's different. This is a different movement. This generation right now, they fed up. They're not having it. They're not having it, and we can see it. That's why we started the show with what's the difference, and that's the difference right now. You know, before we let it die out for everything died out in a week. This thing is just starting. This thing is just starting. You know, and I'm just glad that people have decided to say, you know what? Just because my grandmother and grandfather believe in that, that don't mean I gotta believe in it. You know, that's the beauty of this movement right now.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rodney.
No, and I think to my sentiments exactly, and I think I saw a sign that a person had. They were protesting. It said, "You F with the last generation," and I think that speaks volumes of what we need to see. And you know, I was down there doing the protests and things of that nature, and to get some interviews and things of that nature. And what I felt was a sense of urgency. What I felt was a sense of courage. What I felt was people realizing how much power they had. Even though, like you said, we're not condoning the rioting and the looting and things of that nature, but we have to understand they couldn't even control what was going on. Because you know why? It was so many of us moving in masses. It was so many of us moving in cells, and so many of us moving in ways where as though the cops couldn't even have no control. They couldn't even control it. So, and all I was asking the people is, and this is what I tell the people, that same energy that we're taking, that we're taking to destroy certain things, destroy certain businesses, like you said, Suave, that was being built, that can be rebuilt, but a life can't. But take that same energy and use it now that we got the world's attention, and now that people see how powerful we are. We've been had the power, but it just took for certain people and certain movements to say, you know what, enough is enough. Now we're going to take it to another level. Let's use this to be able to get the laws changed, to be able to get the defunding and things like that. Let's use this to people so people can be able to see that, you know what, there is a such thing as Black America. You know what I mean? And let's say this too: the propaganda the narrative that's being shifted, that has been shifted for years and decades. Black on black crime, minorities. Those are words that have.
Quick.
Yeah, Doc, yeah.
Who what she just said. She's right on. She's right on point, and so is the brother. Everybody is on point, to tell you the truth. It's so that, I mean, the point of people this bullying a certain community, because that's what is happening, and thinking that they could get away with it. The people who sit on the sideline and allow that bullying to take place, but are witnesses of it, have a greater responsibility to speak out against it too. We had some very extreme examples that this took place, but you're absolutely right. A traffic stop for a Black man could be a whole lot different than a traffic stop for a white man. That's why they talked about the the white people, some of the poor white people are being not being treated the same as a well white person. And we get that because they have both race and they have class discrimination that is going on right now. The only difference is that a poor black man will probably not enjoy the same freedom of movement as a poor white man who gets up and puts on a suit and tie and walks into a store as a black man that gets up and puts on a suit and tie. Everybody when it comes down to just everyday life. So we're never, ever going to enjoy the real competitive spirit of living in America and the real freedoms of America as long as we keep holding somebody down. But there's a lot of energy that it's going to take to hold somebody down and keeping your knee on their neck that could be used for doing something much better. And Suave, conversations like this and the people who you have on this conference call or this Zoom call right now are the ones that can help make a difference and move this conversation to where it needs to go.
Indeed.
You know, and in closing, I want to say that when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, most of America thought it was wrong. Oh, wow, he's disrespecting the flag. He's disrespecting the patriots of America. But yet when this no good cop took a knee and took a life, they are against his arrest. If we see what they're doing in Atlanta right now, the cops are not reporting to work because 2 cops got indicted for the murder of a black man. That's what people should be protesting about. Like, how is it that you get to kill somebody and your department is rebelling against it and not showing to work, putting other Americans in danger? All them cops that report sick because they retaliated, they should all be stripped of their guns and badge. That's what I say. The same way Colin Kaepernick was stripped of his NFL career because somebody thought that he was wrong. These cops should be stripped of their privileges of having a badge, a gun, or collecting a pension. I'll pass it on to you, Dr. O'Neill.
Yeah, you're talking about also such a double standard. You know, Kaepernick posed a threat to anybody. He was doing a peaceful protest.
Right.
And here you have police officers that have a duty out in the street, and they're putting people in jeopardy.
That's right.
And no repercussions at all.
Good point.
It doesn't make any, there's no logic to it. Kaepernick's career, they still didn't rectify the situation.
Right.
He still lost a lot in the process. He paid a huge price for what he did, and that has not changed. An apology means nothing by the NFL.
So
they blacklisted the guy.
We just ran out of time. I just want to thank Dr. August, Rod D, former state rep, Ron Waters, for being with us today. And I hope we could do this again together as a panel, because it's a conversation that's ongoing, and bring more people to join the conversation, right? But I just want to say, man, that y'all sacrifice a lot for people like me. And for those that don't know, I'll be brief. When I was incarcerated with a life sentence, one of the few state reps that was going up there and making sure that lifers, non-lifers, Latinos, blacks, white, Chinese was receiving the treatment that they were supposed to receive was Mr. Ron Waters.
Thank you.
Going into them prisons. When I needed to complete my education to get a bachelor's degree from in prison, Dr. O'Neill and Dr. August were 2 of my professors that ensured that those that needed degrees was receiving the right education and equal education as they teach it in campus. We wasn't giving no easy stuff. In fact, that was harder on us, I believe. Doc, you still owe me a grade, Dr. O'Neill. Right? It was a little harder on us, right? But I appreciate that because they sacrificed their time, they sacrificed their career to ensure that when people like me come back to the community, we could be contributors to the community. And that's what we're doing now. Because most of the people that work in them 2 professors' classes, we out here putting in work in the community. So I just want to put that out and say thank you. And I also say thanks to Radi for being one of the few people that came home, started their own nonprofit, and now you're reaching back, helping the brothers in there. You keeping them alive. Because we all know that if they don't have a voice out here, they don't have a voice in there. So
Yes,
with
sir.
that, I just want to say, everybody be careful. Corona is still alive. You know, be careful, take care of your health. And thank you for participating in this conversation. Dot, it's on you.
Thank you, Brother. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thanks everybody for coming. Good conversation.
Thank you. Good conversation. Thank you.
And,
I really enjoyed this.
Hey,
Thank
State
you.
Ron Waters, I just sent you my number.
And
All
this
right,
show is
my brother, I
sponsored.
look forward. Hey,
This
look.
show is sponsored by Westchester University, and our producer is Dylan.
All right. Thank
And
you.
you're listening to a Justice Conversation on Usala Radio.
Thank you.
Peace.
All right, folks.
Take care, everybody.
All right, take care.
All right.
So long, everybody.